My aunt handed me a serving tray at a party and told me I looked unemployed. She had no idea what was already in motion. By the end of that night, she would lose her house. Her son would lose everything he had built his identity around. And I would walk out of that library, get into my car, and take the scenic route home. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand what happened that evening, you need to understand what kind of woman my Aunt Lenora is, and what her son Trent had been doing for the past 2 years when nobody was watching closely enough. My name is Celeste. I run a supply chain company called Unemployed Distribution. We're valued at $15 million. I built it from nothing: a laptop, a folding table, a studio apartment with a radiator that worked maybe half the time. I grew it into a firm that handles government contracts, manages regional distribution networks, and employs over 60 people. Nobody in my family knows any of that. Not because I'm ashamed of it. I kept it quiet because I understood something early: the people in my family don't ask questions. They make assumptions. And once they've decided who you are, that's it. You're locked into that version of yourself forever, no matter what you build, no matter how far you go. To Lenora, I was just her niece who did some kind of online work. To Trent, just the cousin he never took seriously. The one who showed up to family events alone, drove a sensible car, wore sensible shoes, and never had anything impressive to report. They'd Googled my name once, found nothing flashy, and moved on. What they never thought to check was that Unemployed Distribution operates under a parent company, CH Holdings Group. My name is on the state business registry, buried in a corporate structure that nobody in my family would ever think to look at, because they never thought I was worth looking at. Their arrogance was the only cover I ever needed. Lenora is my father's sister. She treats every social gathering like a performance review for everyone else. She has a comment about your job, your clothes, your relationship status, your life choices. She's the type who says, "I'm just being honest," right before she says something that has nothing to do with honesty and everything to do with making herself feel like the most important person in the room. I had dealt with her my entire life. The loaded comments at Christmas. The dismissive looks at birthdays. The way she'd glance at me and then look away, like I'd already failed some test she hadn't bothered to tell me I was taking. I had built a $15 million company during the same years she spent making those comments. She still thought I was struggling with freelance gigs. That matters. Because it's exactly what made everything that followed possible. The call came 2 weeks before the party. My HR director Sandra knocked on my office door mid-morning with a specific look on her face, the one that means this is unusual and I'm not sure how you're going to take it. She said, "Celeste, there's an application I think you need to see personally. It's family." I put down my coffee. "Show me." She set the file on my desk. I looked at the name at the top, bold and centered. Trent Langford. Lenora's son. My cousin. Applying for Vice President of Business Development at Unemployed Distribution. $120,000 base salary, plus performance bonuses. I sat with that for a long moment. Trent is 3 years older than me. Growing up, he was Lenora's centerpiece, the one she talked about at every gathering, the one who had the big personality and the loud laugh and the kind of confidence that people often mistake for competence. While I was quietly building my business in the background, Trent had been climbing the ladder at a mid-sized shipping firm, collecting titles and credit and a reputation that, as I was about to discover, had some serious problems underneath the surface. He'd spent years making jokes about my little freelance situation. At a family barbecue 2 summers ago, he told me in front of a group of people that I should look into temp agencies because at least that would give me something stable. He said it with a grin. Lenora laughed. I smiled and said nothing. I thought about that barbecue as I stared at his resume. A normal CEO would have passed on the application. Had HR send a polite rejection. Clean, professional, no drama. I am a normal CEO in almost every other situation. I picked up my phone and called the forensic accounting firm I use for vetting senior hires. Full background audit, financials, credentials, employment history. Everything. 72 hours. 3 days later, a courier arrived with a thick red dossier. I closed my office door and opened it. The first page was a letter from the registrar at Hartwell University Extension. Trent's resume listed a master's degree in supply chain management. The letter confirmed he had enrolled in a 2-week introductory seminar on logistics and then withdrawn before completing it. No coursework completed. No degree awarded. Just an enrollment deposit and a checkout date. I turned to the second section. The forensic team had gone through his financial records at his previous employer with a fine-tooth comb. What they found was a consistent pattern. Every quarter, Trent had authorized vendor payments to a company called Fulton Advisory Group for consulting services. The amounts were always just under the threshold that would trigger an automatic audit flag. Over 2 years, those payments totaled $45,000. Fulton Advisory Group was a shell company registered to his college roommate's apartment. No consulting firm. No services rendered. The money moved and disappeared. He wasn't just unqualified. He was a thief. I closed the dossier. And I thought carefully about what I was going to do next. Here's what I didn't do. I didn't call him out directly. I didn't forward the evidence to his current employer. I didn't tip off Lenora. Because a direct confrontation gives people like Trent something to fight against, they get defensive, they spin the story, they play the victim, and suddenly you're the dramatic one and they're basically fine. I didn't want them to walk away fine. I wanted them to do this to themselves. So I drafted an offer of employment. On the surface, it looked completely standard. Salary package, benefits overview, non-disclosure agreement, routine HR onboarding forms. The kind of document stack that makes eyes glaze over because people skip straight to the good parts, the title, the number, the start date. But buried inside were 2 documents that would change everything. The first was a federal affidavit of truth. Because Ironway holds government contracts, every executive hire must sign a sworn statement under penalty of perjury confirming their professional background is clean, no fraud, no misrepresentation, no criminal conduct. Legally binding. If you sign it while concealing embezzlement and a fabricated degree, you are committing a federal felony. The second was the indemnity bond requirement. The VP role required a $500,000 performance and conduct bond, standard for senior roles in government-adjacent firms. It could be posted in cash or secured by a guarantor pledging real estate as collateral. I knew Trent didn't have $500,000. But I also knew that Lenora had a villa. I sent the packet. Then I waited, because I already knew exactly what would happen next. Trent would see the title and the salary and feel like the universe was finally giving him what he deserved. He wouldn't read the fine print, he never does. He'd skim for the good parts and skip the rest. Then he'd hit the bond requirement and feel a flicker of unease. And that's when he'd go to his mother. Lenora would see vice president. She would see $120,000 a year. And she would see her son's success as her own, which, as I was beginning to fully understand, she desperately needed it to be. That's when Lenora called and asked me to come to the celebration party. She needed a notary for some paperwork, she said. Just a quick formality before the guests arrived. When I got there and saw the documents she needed notarized, the last piece clicked into place. Lenora was refinancing. She was signing a deed of trust pledging the villa as collateral against a new loan. The house, her showpiece, the thing she threw parties to display, was being leveraged. Not for an investment. To pay off debts that had been quietly stacking up for years. The cars, the parties, the lifestyle she performed for the neighborhood, all funded by bridge loans and credit she couldn't service on her own. She was barely staying ahead of the calls from her creditors every hour. Trent's incoming salary was supposed to be the life raft that stopped everything from sinking. She wasn't celebrating her son. She was betting her house on him. Literally. I notarized the documents. Said nothing. Then she handed me the champagne tray. I'm not going to pretend that moment didn't land. It did. She shoved that heavy silver tray into my hands in front of the caterers and said, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear, "Don't just stand there. You look so unemployed." My knuckles went white on the cold metal. I wasn't there to serve drinks. I was there because she needed my notary seal. But I didn't argue. I didn't correct her. I took the tray and I started moving through the crowd. There's something clarifying about carrying a tray at a party where you're the one who holds the trap door. Every conversation I drifted past, every glass that got grabbed without eye contact, every laugh that floated across the garden, it all just made the quiet inside me go deeper. At one point, a man in a navy suit reached out and took a glass without glancing at me. I recognized him immediately. He was a regional banker I had negotiated with 6 months earlier. His firm had pitched me a loan offer with interest rates so aggressive I walked out before the coffee arrived. He had no idea who I was standing in front of. He saw a woman with a tray and moved on. It was almost funny. I kept moving. I refilled the tray. I wore the invisible smile and I waited. Near the fountain, Lenora was holding court for the neighbors, saying Trent was going to turn everything around for the family. She clutched her pearl necklace the way you clutch something when you're scared, not celebrating. Her voice was a little too loud. Her laugh came a half-second too fast. She was performing confidence she didn't feel, and I was close enough to see exactly that. I offered her a glass. She took it without making eye contact. Trent found me near the drink station about an hour in, tie loosened, flush-faced from the scotch and the attention. He leaned in the way he always does, like talking to you is something he's generously choosing to do. Hey, Ceci. He's called me that since we were kids. I hate it. Make sure you bring a good bottle to the library. Me and Mom are doing a private signing in there, make it official before sundown. And try to look happy for me, yeah? Jealousy gives you wrinkles. He winked. He actually winked at me. Then he turned and walked back toward the house like a man who has never once considered the possibility that he might be wrong about something. I watched him go. Then I picked up my satchel, felt the weight of the red dossier inside it, and walked down the hallway toward the library. The room smelled of old paper and unearned wealth. Dark wood panels. A grandfather clock ticking in the corner. Shelves of books that had probably never been opened. Lenora was already there adjusting the desk lamp, not for reading, for the photo she was planning to post. Trent sat in the large oak chair behind the desk, turning his engraved fountain pen between his fingers like he was already rehearsing the legend of this moment. I set the document stack on the desk. I had built it carefully. The lethal documents, the federal affidavit and the bond confirmation, were buried deep inside a thick stack of routine paperwork. Benefits enrollment forms. Tax withholding sheets. Non-disclosure clauses. Every signature line marked with a yellow tab, because people who don't read documents follow the tabs. That's just human nature. We're on a tight window, I said, checking my watch with calm, business-like focus. The offer timestamps on filing, and if we don't complete within 10 minutes the package expires and has to be reissued. Just sign the yellow tabs and we'll be done. Lenora looked up briefly. What is all of this? Standard executive onboarding, I said, already turning to the first page. Insurance elections, federal compliance forms, the bond confirmation. Nothing out of the ordinary for a VP package. She nodded and looked back at her phone. I moved through the pages steadily. Not rushed, just efficient. Sign here. Initial here. Date here. Trent signed like he was giving autographs. Lenora initialed with one eye on her screen, making sure her bracelet was visible for the camera. They didn't read a single word. When the last page was done, Trent leaned back wide and put the pen down like a man who just completed something historic. Done, he said. Now where's the champagne? I gathered the papers. I pulled out my notary stamp and pressed it down onto the affidavit. Thud. The sound was sharp in the quiet room. I put the stamp away. And then I walked, not toward the door, but past it. I reached up and turned the brass lock. Click. Lenora's head came up fast. Celeste, what are you doing? I turned around. Something shifted in the room. I could see them both register it, something in my posture, something in my face, some signal that didn't match the woman who had been carrying the tray all afternoon. Trent recovered with a laugh, sharp and dismissive, the way he always does when he's covering unease with volume. You can't just lock that door. You're a notary, Celeste. A glorified secretary with a stamp. Unlock it and go get the champagne before I have your clearance pulled. I didn't answer. I walked to the desk, reached into my blazer and placed a single card face up on the leather pad, right next to the contract he just signed. Matte black. Gold lettering. Heavy stock. Celeste Hale. Founder and CEO. CH Holdings Group, DBA Ironway Distribution. Trent glanced at it, then looked again. His eyes moved to the Ironway letterhead on the contract under his elbow. Back to the card. The connection fired in his brain like a blown fuse. His mouth opened. Nothing came out. The pen rolled off the edge of the desk. You, he said finally, quiet, hollowed out. You own CH Holdings? I do, I said. You never looked past the DBA name. You Googled Celeste, found nothing impressive, and decided I was nothing impressive. You never thought to check the business registry. Your assumption that I wasn't worth paying attention to was the only cover I ever needed. Lenora shot to her feet, face going red the way it does when she's losing control of something. What is this? Is this a joke? Trent wasn't listening to her. He was staring at me with the look of a man who has just realized the ground under him is not what he thought it was. I opened the red dossier. Let me show you what I found when I ordered the forensic audit. I kept my voice level. Not cold. Not dramatic. Just clear. Exhibit A. I laid the vendor payment records on the desk and walked through it precisely. The quarterly payments to Fulton Advisory Group. The amounts kept just below audit thresholds. The shell company registered to his college roommate's apartment. $45,000, 2 years, gone. Lenora started to speak. I kept going. Exhibit B. The letter from Hartwell University Extension, placed on top of the first document. You listed a master's degree in supply chain management. The registrar confirmed you attended a 2-week intro seminar and withdrew. No degree. A deposit receipt. Trent's face had gone a color I'd never seen on him before. Not quite gray, not quite white. Somewhere in between. I picked up the affidavit. Exhibit C. A federal sworn statement declaring your professional record is clean and your employment representations are accurate. You signed it. In front of a notary. I paused just long enough. In front of me. This isn't resume fraud anymore, Trent. This is perjury. That's a federal felony. Lenora reached toward the desk like she was going to sweep the papers away. I put my hand flat on the stack. Hard. Don't touch the evidence. She stopped. I turned to the bond confirmation, the page she had initialed while checking the angle of the light for her photo. The cross-collateralization clause on the indemnity bond ties it directly to his conduct. Fraud triggers immediate default. The full $500,000 becomes due on the date of the triggering event. I looked at her directly. Today is the triggering event. She whispered that she didn't have the money. I know, I said. That's why you pledged the house. I filed the notice of default with the county registry from the parking lot before I came inside. It's already processed. The foreclosure has begun. This property now belongs to CH Holdings. You have 30 days. I follow the law. You'll have your full notice period. The grandfather clock ticked. Trent put his face in his hands. Lenora sat back down. Not by choice. Her legs just stopped. I stood there for a moment. I thought about the barbecue. About every Christmas. About the tray she'd shoved into my hands 2 hours ago in front of the caterers. About 10 years of being looked through by people who never considered that I might be worth looking at. I let myself feel it for exactly 1 second. Then I picked up the dossier, put it in my satchel, and said quietly, "You told me to be useful today." I was. I just showed you the difference between an asset and a liability. Trent is a liability. The difference now is it's documented and permanent. I unlocked the double doors and walked out. The party noise hit me immediately, music, laughter, glasses clinking. People celebrating something that had already ended on the other side of that door. I walked straight through it, out the front gate, and got into the car that was waiting. Back to headquarters? the driver asked. Yes. Take the scenic route. I blocked 2 numbers. Turned off my phone. Watched the neighborhood roll past the window. 6 months later, the villa sold at foreclosure auction. Lenora moved into a 2-bedroom rental. Quieter now. Less performative. Whether that's genuine change or just the loss of the stage she used to perform on, that's not my business anymore. Trent took a plea arrangement on the perjury count. The fraud documentation went to the appropriate authorities. He's permanently barred from corporate roles. He works warehouse nights now. I never contacted either of them after that evening. The VP role at Ironway was filled 3 months later by a woman with a real MBA, a clean record, 8 years of genuine experience, and references that held up at every level. One of the best hires I've ever made. She doesn't know the history of the role she's filling. She doesn't need to. I approved her signing bonus personally. Here's what I want you to take from this. A lot of people would have dropped that tray the second Lenora handed it to them. Would have announced themselves right there in the garden and watched everyone scramble to recalculate. And honestly, that's understandable. After years of being dismissed by the same people, the temptation to just flip the table is real. But a scene gives them something to recover from. They get to play the victim, spin the story, and rewrite what happened until they come out looking sympathetic. A couple of years pass and it becomes the time dramatic Celeste caused a scene at a party. That's not the story I wanted to leave behind. The version I chose was slower. It required patience, preparation, and the ability to carry a tray for 2 hours without letting a single thing show on my face. But it was permanent. It had consequences that couldn't be undone by a family meeting or a tearful phone call. I didn't win the argument. I made the argument irrelevant. Real power doesn't need to announce itself in every room. It doesn't need everyone to know your title before you sit down. Real power is knowing exactly what you have and choosing carefully when to show it. It's letting people underestimate you so completely that when the moment comes, they have absolutely nothing left to say. Sometimes the strongest move you can make is to just pick up the tray. Thanks for listening, and if this story hit something in you, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and don't forget to comment and subscribe for more stories about people who built their success in silence and let the results speak for themselves. The most dangerous person in the room is the one who has nothing left to prove, because they already built the proof.